Time for another market update. We're in arguably the slowest point of the year for the major sports. Is now a time to buy? Let's take a look at the card markets from a macro level and see what's been happening. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Data Dive. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot. Thanks as always for stopping by. Today, something a little more straightforward than the last few topics. We're covering another market update. It's been almost 2 months since I last did one of these updates. We're past the NFL draft and more than halfway to the next season starting. Basketball and hockey are now wrapped up and baseball is almost halfway through the season. Before we get into this, I will of course be using Market Movers. Market Movers now has over 670,000 cards in our database and over 1,300 sealed wax products being tracked daily. Search dozens of Market Pulse indexes or track your entire collection. Visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code TRIAL for your first 7 days totally free. And now, let's go ahead and get into the data. All right, so very similar to last time, I'll be going through our Market Pulse indexes and then I'll be jumping over to our price movements to take a look at see what's been going on with specific players' prices in general. So starting out here, I'm going to be comparing the SCI 500, which is our biggest index. It's 500 of the most important historical cards through all sports and all eras. And we'll see how that's tracking compared to some of the different specific sport indexes. If you saw the video I did back when the NHL playoffs were first facing off, I created an index with some help from Leon from my team of specific players from the playoffs that were going to be key in the playoffs. And we said, we'll track and see what's happening to these prices over time. And so what I'm doing here as we look at hockey and then the subsequent other sports is I kind of went back 2 weeks prior to these key moments. So in this case for hockey, 2 weeks prior to when the Stanley Cup playoffs first faced off. And that's back on April 18th. So I'm tracking these prices and what you can see is pretty much almost neck and neck for the SCI 500 and for this playoff index of NHL players. Many players obviously being bounced, not unique to hockey, pretty much universally for all sports. Once a team gets bounced, those players' prices end up decreasing in the ensuing 4 to 8 weeks or so. And that's certainly what happened here. So we can see tracking these prices, all of a sudden you see kind of in the midst of the playoffs, people start getting eliminated, down, down, down. Then you see this little uptick here. That was several of the players who were making it into the Stanley Cup Finals. Cale Makar, McKinnon, and others were seeing their prices go up, and then they start coming back down all of a sudden here. So a lot of price decreases across the board. You can scroll down and we can sort of take a look and sort these players by price. You can see, again, several players seeing their prices going down. We talked, and highlighted back in that hockey episode, Jonathan Huberdeau. We talked about, we might have talked about Sebastian Aho. Several players, we for sure talked about Marner seeing their prices going down, and even McKinnon now seeing his prices decrease rapidly in spite of winning that championship. So we can jump over here to take a look at basketball. And obviously we have these different indexes broken out by era. So the 2018 to 2020 basketball index down significantly compared to the SCI 500 since 2 weeks before the NBA playoffs had started. So this index in particular down 25%. We can switch and take a look at the 2010 to 2017 index. Similar story, down 23%. And let's go back and look at what's kind of more of a still modern index. So the 2000 to 2009, not quite as bad as those more ultra-modern indexes, down 14% since 2 weeks before the NBA playoffs started. Jumping over to football, similar story here, down 23% on the 2018 to 2020 football index. Taking a look here, down 41.5%. 41.5% on the 2010 to 2017 index. And if we scroll down, you'll see a lot of this has to do with Patrick Mahomes. His price is down significantly. Jimmy Garoppolo down 68%. I did an episode on Jimmy G specifically in the NFL playoffs saying, don't fall for the trap of buying Jimmy G at this high point. Even if you thought the 49ers were a lock somehow to win the Super Bowl, I said it was a bad idea. And look at the end average price on this, $11.50 for his PSA 10 Chrome. Those were certainly going for a lot more. And let's just jump down and take a look at 2000 to 2009 and kind of see what's going on there. Also down 27%. So football down significantly across the board since just before the playoffs began. Does that present a buying opportunity? Obviously, there's some external factors bigger than just sports cards with looming recession or being in the throes of recession, as I said, I think we already are. If you're really worried about that and you're tightening, your purchases, maybe you don't see a buying opportunity here. If you think and believe that there's going to be another uptick heading into the preseason for the NFL just before the season starts, there may be some real buying opportunities for different players if you think that's the case. So let's jump over finally and take a look at baseball. We can't talk about the major sports without baseball. Down 30%. 30% on the 2018 to 2020 Ultra Modern Baseball Index. Let's jump down in 2010 to 2017, down 21%. So baseball, we saw this last year and we're seeing it again this year. A lot of price fall off after the season begins for the vast majority of players. Certain players obviously will see price increases. If we come down here and we click on this, you can see Corey Seager's prices just absolutely bleeding out on his PSA 10 Chrome base card. But Aaron Judge, no surprise, and his teammate Anthony Rizzo, Nolan Arenado, certain players who have been performing really well, they're seeing their prices go up, but again, the vast majority going down. And then finally, let's jump back and just look at 2000 to 2009 actively playing players. This index down 12.1%. It looks like there was a period here, a good run of a few weeks where the prices were actually up. That must have been carried by some of the bigger cards in the index. But if we come down here, you can see you got Robinson Cano prices increasing, which is really interesting. He's got a really high career WAR. He's a guy that I think is kind of sneaky, but it remains to be seen what's going to happen with him in terms of Hall of Fame potential, obviously with some of the different issues he's had throughout his career. And again, if we sort this, let's take a look and see who's down the most. So very interesting, Clayton Kershaw, Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina. The Cardinals are playing really well. Pujols hasn't been playing terribly. He's obviously not playing like the Pujols of old, but again, you can kind of take a look at some of these. Remember that the hockey index is completely public. It's available to everybody. We can put the link to that index down in the show notes for this episode. So if you're curious about Market Pulse and you want to see how this works, you can jump in here. Obviously, like I said, go and try Market Movers completely for free. Now let's jump over to the price movements. If you remember, we have price movements by card. We have price movements by player. Let's jump over and take a look at price movements by card. And what I did here, I focused again for consistency on different sets. So we've got Prism Silvers in PSA 10. I set a price threshold of a minimum of $30 because we see a lot of volatility in terms of percent change when you go smaller than that. And I'm doing the last 60 days just to see what's the price change been on the last 60 days. DeAnthony Melton, obviously, I think having been traded, maybe people optimistic about him having more of a role with the Philadelphia 76ers. Same thing with Jeremy Grant, going from the Pistons, where he was playing well, but it wasn't a competitive team, out to Portland, where they seem to suddenly be building a pretty solid roster around Dame and others on that team. And then scrolling down, Kevon Looney. I don't care that this card is a pop 15. I wouldn't care, honestly, if this card was a pop 1. In my opinion, $200 for a Prism Silver PSA 10 of Kevon Looney is it's Looney. I don't really understand that kind of a price for a role player. He played fantastic in the playoffs, don't get me wrong. Obviously, he may be leaving the Warriors, much to their chagrin, to go to another team. But there's hundreds, thousands of cards I'd rather spend $200 on than that card. Maybe it went to a fan, a collector, somebody who collects Kevon Looney, like I collect Andre Drummond, you never know. But that seems really, really high to me. And just kind of scrolling down here again, we can see several players with their cards going up. Rumors that John Collins may be traded, but now there seems to be saying he's going to stay in Atlanta. And let's just jump all the way to the end of the list here and see if we can see who's been going down the most. And let's see. So Mikal Bridges, after the Suns had their flop. Mikal Bridges is the perfect example of a type of player who I think is really good, but I wouldn't be paying high dollars for his cards and expecting them to hold value in the long term, because he's kind of that 3-and-D type player. He's got a lot of potential. He's going to be in the NBA for a long time, and a lot of teams will benefit from having him there, but he's never going to be the focal point, in my opinion, of collectors, and so his card price is down significantly. In contrast, Jordan Poole, a lot of people very optimistic about his future, but his prices went up so much during that playoff run, now down 61% on his Prism Silver. And just kind of scrolling up, Similar story with Desmond Bain, I imagine. Tyler Hero, obviously a lot of these guys. Jalen Brunson now rumored to be signing a massive contract. By the time this hits YouTube, maybe he'll be officially inked with the Knicks or another team for a really big contract. And Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, no surprises here really. A lot of these guys that saw the biggest price increases heading into and during the playoffs, now coming back down to earth, Ja and LaMelo. So overall, I think we're seeing, again, more price movement down certainly on these players than we are up. And some of those names that are, headed in the north direction, heading up, are not necessarily the household ones that you'd want to be chasing after. Let's jump over to football. Same exact thing, last 60 days, Prism Silvers, and see who's been going up. Mitch Trubisky. Why does it seem like every year, this time of year, Mitch Trubisky cards keep spiking? And then I make a video and say, stop buying Mitch Trubisky. It's nothing against Mitch Trubisky, but stop buying Mitch Trubisky. I don't know why his price is always uptick. It's literally this time of year, I think, for the last 2 years, people get hyped on that guy and think he's gonna do something awesome. Mike Evans up 48%. Maybe that has to do with Brady coming out of retirement again. Could just be that his prices had come down significantly and are rebounding. And just scrolling down, Juju Smith-Schuster, interesting one, right? Because he's now with the Chiefs. Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill. What kind of role is Juju going to have there? I believe it's just a one-year deal, so we'll see what his long-term future is in the league. But he's a guy who obviously could see a lot more targets and a lot more yards this season, depending on what his role ends up being with the Chiefs. And just scrolling down, then we start getting into sort of the neutral territory. So jumping to the other end of the spectrum and going to the bottom, Christian McCaffrey, down 47%. People worried. And this is why we talk about, with football especially, positional players, really all players in football, that injury risk is so dangerous. And it's not like other sports where guys get hurt, but they can come back and continue to play really long careers. Football can be a little bit different. These guys can have one serious injury, and that's it for their careers. Deshaun Watson, obviously, totally different scenario. Again, off the field problems, still question marks. Is he going to get suspended? That's the rumor now, is that he's going to be suspended for the entire upcoming year. Tyreek Hill, really interesting. Tua prices have been going up, with Hill moving to the Dolphins, but Hill prices going down because I guess people aren't as optimistic about him getting the ball to Hill as they were Mahomes. So Tyreek Hill prices going down. CeeDee Lamb prices down 38%. That's a really interesting one, only because I know a lot of people are really high on him to break out this upcoming season. A.J. Dillon, again, I think he's a pretty solid back. I know he's a collector. Maybe people just, are still concerned about him splitting time with Aaron Jones. And also, it's just back to that running back situation. Is he going to be a marquee top 3 running back in the NFL? It's possible, but people are probably not thinking that. Mahomes down 31% on his prices. Really drastic decreases on Mahomes. I think if I were going after certain players, I am concerned about the improvements in the defenses on the other teams in that division, with the Raiders and with the Chargers and the Broncos. But I still think Mahomes is the guy in the NFL to carry the torch after Brady is gone. And then just kind of scrolling up, you can see the rest of these guys. Let's jump over and take a look at baseball. So baseball, last 60 days, I'm doing Topps Chrome refractors, kind of all eras, but you can see who's been going up. Nico Horner apparently getting some love, although the price at $22.50, it's not really anything super significant in terms of price change. Rafael Devers having a great season. Yordan Alvarez also having a fantastic season. I was speaking with Nicholas from my team, who's a big Astros fan, and we're kind of making the comparison of Yordan Alvarez to David Ortiz. Obviously a long way to go, but he does seem to fit that mold. An awesome hitter, playing DH and having an absolutely fantastic season. Certainly will be in that conversation for MVP leading into the All-Star break. And then Nolan Arenado, again, having a great season, although he's cooled off pretty significantly compared to the first month of the year. Recently starting to pick it up again. Zach Gallen, Gleyber Torres obviously rebounding nicely from having had a couple of bad seasons the last couple of years. Jack Flaherty, back from injury, 3 rough outings, now back to the IL. We'll see what happens with Jack Flaherty. I'm a big Jack Flaherty fan, but obviously wouldn't be super high on his prices long term. And so then let's shift back to the lowest prices here and kind of check out and see what's going on. Joe Adell. Is this guy going to amount to anything? We really don't know. Super low pop on this card. It just popped 9 on his PSA 10 refractor. So Not a high population card, and yet nevertheless only at $33, even with that low population right now. He obviously hasn't been good. People were super high on him, and he hasn't been able to contribute in a meaningful way to that Angels lineup. Eloy Jimenez struggling. Bo Bichette struggling. Not having a terrible season, honestly, but not doing what people expected, not doing what I expected. Same thing with Tyler O'Neill and Yohan Moncada, and then just scrolling up and rounding out the list. Trey Turner's an interesting one to me because he's actually been getting better every month progressively, and this last month he's playing very, very well. So down 52% on Trey Turner cards, not a super high population on his Topps Chrome refractors. And then you've got Ronald Acuna Jr. down 45% in spite of the fact that he's having a really good season. Obviously, the lingering injury concerns may be a big concern for a lot of people. And finally, let's jump over to hockey, the Young Guns cards here. Let's take a look and see. So, you've got a handful of guys that are, headed in the right direction. Obviously, Evander Kane had a really solid playoffs, didn't ultimately make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. We've talked about Cale Makar over and over and over again. Let's see if anybody else jumps out at us. And, a handful of guys still definitely up in a positive direction over the last 60 days. When we did the top 5 earlier this week, hockey is the sport that's holding the strongest depending on era and specific players compared to the rest of the market. But there are other players we'll see here. Down notably Kirby Dach, Sebastian Aho, and let's see, we talked about Jonathan Huberdeau. So several players up, several players down in hockey. Again, this is one of my favorite things to do, just to try to get a pulse on what's going on with the market, to understand and kind of help inform what should I be targeting right now, what do I want to buy. Start at the high level with the indexes, understand what's going on with the sport, and the ones that are down the most significantly, coupled with this time of year, again, like football, like basketball, if you're interested in either of those sports and you collect or invest in those, now could be a good buying opportunity, again, depending on what happens with the overall economy between now and then. And I guess I did tee this up for some other sports too, just some of the more miscellaneous sports to kind of see what's been going on with these players. Obviously hard to target in on a specific set variation, so this is just at the player level. You've got Moukoko up 46% in the last 60 days. Several soccer players trending up here. We've got Timothy Weah, we've got Nadal up 25%. Obviously one of the all-time great tennis players, Weston McKennie and Vinicius Jr., Timo Werner up 10%. But then for the rest of these players, it's pretty much all down. Very surprising to me to see Mbappe right now still trending in a downward direction when we've got World Cup coming up later this year. Very excited about that personally. Obviously France, the favorites again to win the World Cup, or right there with Brazil to win the World Cup. So Mbappe, a lot of people high on him and buying him right now. I think he's a guy whose name we could see swirling a lot at the National this year. And just kind of scrolling down to kind of give you a look at what's going on with the rest of these players. Kai Havertz just hasn't been particularly good for Chelsea at all, nor for the German national team. And let's scroll here. Phil Foden, man, he was a guy last year that everybody was super, super high on. He's come crashing back down to earth. And perhaps somewhat very interesting, Michael Schumacher and Mick Schumacher rounding out at the bottom, down 47 and 54% respectively. So that does it for your Market Pulse update this week. Let me know what stands out to you the most down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and would be so kind, click the little thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell icon so that you can be notified of every new video. Thanks as always for watching, and until next time, happy investing.